Alright, now let's put that piece back on there. These brake lines I'm going to run once this is installed. So I want to be able to take them out without pulling the whole front end out. So the way you do that is you install them while the front end's in. If you can install them, you can get them out. At least that's my story, I'm sticking to it. I'm sure some of y'all are going to watch me screwing these in and go, Nick, why don't you use a air gun? Well, I'm not going to, because I want to take my time putting these in to make sure nothing catches or I don't cross thread something and have a big problem. So some things are good to use with the air wrench and some aren't. Guys, so what I did wrong is when I cut these pieces off, I should have left that much more so that the IMOHR can bolt through this. So I'm going to cut this. I kept these pieces because you never know. I'm going to weld my pieces back on and then be done with that. Right, let me show you what I'm doing. That's a makeup piece because remember how I cut this big section out? Well, I should have left a little bit more than I did. So you only cut it out where the bulkhead drops down, because then it comes back up and the subframe bolts to this. So I'm gonna clean this up, weld the other one, or weld this one, then cut the other one out. All right guys, I got these welded back in. You can see my piece here where my weld is. Welded this one back in, welded that one back in. Let me show you how far I cut out. Just so you'll know, I cut about I'd go 4.5 inches. You know, maybe, well, 4.5. Let's see what this side is, because I didn't really measure them. I just kind of guesstimated. And this one's 4 3/8. So I would go 4 3/8. This, from this piece here, I'm out 3 inches. And then 4 3/8. So that's how you kind of cut your 3 inches here, and then 4 3/8. They cut straight. So let me put this on and see how it fits. As y'all can see, I've set this back on after I've fixed those pieces. And you can see how they fit. They fit perfect. So this piece is hanging down like it should. So it's hanging proud, and then I've got plenty of room for that reinforcement piece. Let me show from this angle. So that's kind of how it looks. The same on this side. I got a little bit more room over here, but it's whatever. Frame is centered. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the holes. There's gonna be a hole through here, which you can see there's a hole right here where you drop a bolt down and kind of help bolt it together. So I'm gonna get this up, marked up and cut, or drilled. I've got these bolts. You see right there? Remember that piece of metal I had actually cut off and I welded back on the pan? It bolts through under there. So you can kind of see how it goes. You can see where I welded the pan back in. And that's where the bolts go. You see on that one too. I bought some new bolts that I thought were pretty nice looking. They turned out being the wrong thread pitch. These are 12 by 1.5. That's the size of these. And I don't know what these are. They're 12 by, probably 12 by 1. They're pretty coarse. They're a coarser thread. big stack of washers on these. That's just temporary. I'm buying new bolts tomorrow. I just want to get this on there. You can see right in there that they're sitting flush on those pads. So everything's good. So all I got to do tomorrow is pick up some bolts that'll fit that up, and that's really all there is to it right now, guys. That's not all there is to it. I've got some other hardware kits came with it. So apparently it's got a bolt down in some other places. Alrighty, haven't taken y'all for a ride in this. What you won't be able to see is my Davies Craig water pump screen, but who cares, right? Let me get buckled up. Get this thing started. Need to get my parking brake. Got the gate opening up. I've got the Holley Sniper in here. Got the gauge set. Did her speed hut. Y'all can probably see my rear view camera. I've got to spoil the scoop on back with the radiator so you can't see. So I put this in for an RV. It works fantastic. It's got a really good view. And hopefully this video won't bounce y'all around too much. Driving, my alley's a little bumpy. That's why I got a Baja, just kidding. It's not that bad, but it's, you wait for my gate to shut. You'll see it moving right there. That's my gate shutting. Got that big old electric gate. This motor has a street port, so y'all can probably hear that. Really fun car. It's surprisingly comfortable for being what it is. I softened up the suspension. At first it was just way too hard. The suspension was really tough. And so I lightened up the suspension on it. And pardon the bouncing around, guys. I don't have like that high speed stabilizing and all the stuff that comes with GoPros. On the freeway, I'm cruising 80 to 95 at about 3,500 RPM. And it just is like smooth as glass. So that's 80 to 85 to 90 miles an hour if you're a YouTube viewer. If you're my insurance agent, that's kilometers an hour. All right, but everyone else, that's miles an hour. Just a really fun car to drive. It's a lot more enjoyable than I thought it would be. Downside is I don't have air conditioning, but what I plan on doing, one of my projects is I want to put in an air conditioning system out of like maybe a Tesla or some other kind of electric car. You can buy the electric pumps, electric air conditioning compressors for about 400 bucks. And I can get from like, what's it called, Power Bastards. I can get a Power Bastards 200 amp alternator for it. The air conditioning compressor uses about 35, I think. So I'll have adequate power. So that's kind of the next thing. I've got an air conditioning evaporator, the evaporator's already in here. I've just got to put in the condenser and do all that stuff. But I've got a lot of other projects that I'm kind of focusing on. And of course, when it's 8 billion degrees out, I'll be wishing I had done this one. Road. You get on the freeway, it might be kind of noisy, so you may not hear me talk, but it shouldn't be quite so bumpy, so let y'all know what it's like on the freeway. Just got back from my 700th trip to get bolts. Got the bolts for the bulkhead on this. I'll show you in a second. Finally, I think these are, I don't know, 70 or 80 millimeter, 80 millimeter, I think. I got 80s. 90s were way too long. I thought that was the size we had to use. I drove A-Hole. This car's named A-Hole. I drove A-Hole to pick up bolts. Things running absolutely fantastic. Running good. I saw a little bit of a coolant leak, right? You see that right there? But it's coming out of that little petcock. That's a little drain. It's a tiny leak. And sometimes those things just kind of fill up with sediment and kind of fix on their own. So before I jack with it, I mean, it's dripping so, like one drip every 20 minutes. I mean, it's tiny. All right, what I'm gonna do first is get this paint cleaned off right here. I can't get a sanding disc in there, so I'm gonna use a cutoff wheel. It needs to be very careful. One thing y'all need to know, I was not cutting, I was just grinding paint off, as y'all can see right there. So let me get the welder hooked up. I'm gonna shut the garage real quick because there's a breeze coming in. And the last thing I need is gas on. Let me get my helmet on. These welds are very important. So if you're not a good welder, because these welds are important. If you're not a good welder, because what happens is, all the weight on this thing is going to be rocking this way, and it's just going to pry and pry on the front. This has to be a strong weld to keep the whole thing flat. So I'm not a great welder, but I'm good enough to get that done. Might not want to drive around me for first few weeks. I'm just kidding. This will be taken care. This will be just fine. It helps if I ground my work. How it actually works out when I'm close to it. Let me knock this tip off here. All right. Looking good. All right, let me show y'all what I did. That's a serious weld. It's not going anywhere. And like I said, you can't weld this front side, but y'all can probably see the weld there. That's the one I had a spot there, but this is like very well penetrated, so everything's looking good on that. I'm probably going to hit this side a little bit more on the frame edge, but that's it. Let me go ahead and do that real quick. It's probably fine, but probably, you know, I'd rather be for sure than probably, so I'm going to hit that real quick, and then we're good to go. All right. Fire, fire, you old Miss McGuire. That's a pretty weld. Well, pretty for my welds anyway. Let me, all right, I got my welds done. Let me kind of show you what it looks like. I ran a double bead on it. I know that's not absolutely beautiful, but it's penetrated really well into the plate and into the tunnel. That's not going anywhere. I was like, better safe than sorry, and I could probably pull this nut out. Now the weld goes up against the plate. Anyway, so it's all the way through and looking good. Looking good enough for me. Can't do the other side because you don't have access to it. On these spindles, when you buy the IMOHR suspension, they sell their own spindles that this bolts into. This spacer, the reason I have this spacer on here is I'm using stock spindles. By that I mean I'm using actually, and I'll show you in a minute, those spindles over there are actually front ball joint drum, because the Wilwood brakes I'm using are going to require that. But this piece right here is so you won't get bump steer if you're using the stock spindles. So make sure you tell them if you're using stock spindles, if you're buying theirs. And let me show you these spindles here. What you have to do if you're using stock spindles, here's a stock spindle. This, oh, it's a drop. This right here, that's the taper for the tie rod. It needs to be drilled out to 17 millimeter. You have to get rid of the taper because that component over there slides through this and bolts through the other side. I know it's kind of complicated sounding, but it's actually pretty easy. It's going to kind of go like this. It's going to kind of go like that on there, and that's how that installs. Keep from getting bump steer. Also, I bought the Wilwood brakes. These are for the front. I've got Wilwoods for the rear. These are from Air Cooled Works. I have a spacer on there with an adapter. These are 5x114, and my wheels are, 5x100. But anyway, I'll be doing an install on these here probably next week on this brake setup. On the rear, just so y'all know, these are my 930 stubs, and these are from Latest Rage. And I found out there's a problem with them, and this seems to be something with Latest Rage. These are made too thick. So the seal cap deals slide on, but when you try to put the bearings on, the inner race gets stuck right in here and it won't go down any further. Well, it's because this was a little bit too thick. So I had to take these to my buddy's shop, get the machine down so that the inner races on the bearings would fit. And I posted on a Facebook group before I had a machine that they wouldn't fit. And a guy responded, he's like, dude, did you get the Latest Rage 930 stubs? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're going to have to get a machine because they made them too thick. So if you're running 930s here, make sure if you get Latest Rage that you get them machined or check them with the bearings because they won't fit over the races. Also, I had pointed out earlier on that last video that the spacers here, if you're going to run disc brakes, but on my kit, isn't this garage a freaking mess? Anyway, on my kit from Air Cooled Works, they use this for to mount the rear drum or the rear discs, and so this is actually going to take the place of that, so I didn't need this in the first place. So anyway, if you're not using that, then you're going to have to either make a spacer or use that. Thanks again for watching these. I got some really cool stuff coming up. I've got a video where I do an alignment on a front end alignment on the Baja. You saw me drive it, and this thing is such a fun car. Something else I got coming, I've got a 1970 BMW that I've got a bridge-ported rotary in, and I'm bringing it back to do a little bit of exhaust work, and I have to build a new fan shroud because it's running a little bit hot when it's sitting. It's not getting quite enough air through it, so I'm going to be building that. I'm going to be working on this right here. So I got a ton of stuff going on, so I can't wait to get some more videos for you guys.